Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from eGrant03. Hey boss lady, he chose to do things the hard way. Let's jump right in. This happened to my brother-in-law, but I love this story so much, so you're getting it. My brother-in-law was in the army for a while back in the mid to late 90s through to the early 2000s. He worked in health services. He was one among a handful of people that were charged with notifying new recruits of the results of their HIV and STD testing. His boss is quite high ranking, but I don't know which rank. I do know that there were only a dozen or so people at or above her rank, and because she was in charge of the hospital and medical services, she had 100% authority to tell anyone on base to go truck themselves if it meant it would mess with base health or safety. There was also a rule that men notified men and women notified women. He and a male doctor would often do this, same but a woman for the females. Usually there was only one dude and one gal per shift, so you dropped what you were doing and went. Make sense? One day he's told to grab someone for their notification. They worked in the base mess cafeteria on the line. He didn't mention specifics cause he couldn't, but the dude had other diseases that could have been transferred by contaminant food products. Basically, you don't want this guy serving you food. For ease of typing, let's call him Fred. The guy in charge of the mess was a notorious pain in the butt, hard brass. He got stuff done well and under budget, but was so mean and ugly about everything that no one wanted to deal with him, usually referring to his assistants instead. He will be Buck as in Buck you. I'm funny. Brother-in-law was sent to grab Fred right before midday meal service. This had been problematic before, so he asked his boss what to do if Buck pushed back. Boss lady was stern, but kind-hearted, so you would get a straightforward, honest, and supporting answer. She looked at my brother-in-law right in the eyes and said, "You are acting on my authority as a health officer. Whatever you've got to say within the confines of military code of justice, I will back your play." Not an exact quote, but that's the way brother-in-law always said it. You say boss lady gave you specific orders to do the thing, don't break the law, and she'd back you. I always thought it was awesome that she'd be so trusting. Anyway, brother-in-law makes the drive across base to the mess and asks to see Fred. Food is on the line, but no one has arrived yet. Fred comes over, brother-in-law says he's gotta come with me, and Fred goes to clear it with Buck. Instead of staying behind and waiting to hear back, brother-in-law followed Fred. This would be useful later. Buck is in his office doing last-minute stuff before lunch, and Fred tells him health services needs him. Buck looks at brother-in-law and says Fred will head over after third lunch winds down. "Sir, no sir, Fred needs to come now." Buck explains that food is about to start and he can't spare him. "You're not high-ranking enough to demand this, private, blah blah bullying, go away." Any guesses where I'm going with this? So brother-in-law grabs out his radio and calls his boss. "Yeah, high-ranking boss, respectfully addressing you. Per your instruction, we're going to be clearing and dumping all food, both cooked and uncooked, on the line and off that's in the mess. Who do we notify that the mess is closed? And how do we arrange someone to get basically 400 plus fresh portions from the warehouse?" Buck is freaking out. "The frick are you doing? People will be here in 10 minutes. Well, boss lady said that anything Fred came into contact with, or anything cooked by people Fred came into contact with, needs to get pulled, tested for illnesses, and dumped if he can't come now. To explain, if you handle a raw chicken and don't wash your hands, you risk cross-contamination and getting others sick. If he could make it to health services, they could run a quick test to see if his illness posed a threat and call down to the mess. It would take 15 to 30 minutes and cause a slight delay. Or, Buck could take over 2 hours cooking everything again." Brother-in-law said that if he had a problem with boss lady's orders, he could go down to her office and state his complaint to her face. He would surely take not just heat, but torpedo his career for calling out a superior officer. So Buck tells Fred to get the H out and not come back unless he's got written instructions stating he is not a contamination risk. Brother-in-law and Fred leave, and brother-in-law saw a "lunch will be delayed" type sign go up as he was driving away. First and only time it happened while he was stationed there. Within 25 or so minutes, Buck was able to reopen for lunch. Brother-in-law said it was one of the only times he'd be able to say "screw you" and the horse you rode in on to a superior officer without getting backlash. Did you notice that it wasn't even a question of "no, you can't use your rank to tell me no"? It was more of a "sure, you can absolutely pull rank on me, but here are the consequences if you do that." Alright, here comes the speculation period. Comment down below, what do you think he had that was so bad that they'd have to throw out all of the food? Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Unfettered Defiance. Fine, we'll do it your way. Let's jump right in. So, not sure if this is malicious compliance or just hoping really hard some douchebag's decisions come back to bite him. I am an artist and a graphic designer. I've worked on comics, video games, and webtoons and the like, and I'm pretty successful at it as a freelancer. I've recently left my design team and have been flying solo with some decent success. Got a fairly big project from a group making a sort of adult choose-your-own-adventure interactive comic. I've been hired to design the girls, monsters, and some items based on guidelines from a scenario book. Since it's easy enough and adult projects pay well, though don't go into my main resume, I took it. The cost of the project broke down like this. Each character was determined to be $250 for figure, so front, back, side each are $250, with accessories, outfits, and stuff being an additional $100 to $250 depending on difficulty. There are multipliers and caveats for characters' difficulties, like hair, curls, lace, things that will take more time. Request, redraws, and all that are extra after the initial sketchwork has been approved and anything outside the scope of the guidelines. So if you ask me to design a freckle-faced redhead and I do that, and you decide she should be blonde or raven-haired, I'm gonna charge you for that. There were 16 characters, 12 monsters, and a whole lot of treasures, trinkets, and accessories to draw. So this was a big money project for me and about 3 weeks of solid 9 to 5 work. I got right in. Now the scenario writer, we'll call her Jessica, was cool. Her notes were clear, she was very organized, had a spreadsheet and PDF with hyperlinks to examples and visuals. Was everything you wanted with doing this kind of work. No mysterious, no guessing, I knew exactly what she wanted. The other guy, the lead writer, Yen, this man was a headache and a half. My contract covered everything I discussed above and some more, royalties and whatnot, but specifically spoke about changes, fixes, and alterations outside of the scope of the guidelines. Something someone apparently did not tell this idiot. The first 8 designs went well. Working with Jessica was easy. She approved everything quickly, though didn't sign off on them. I think it was because she was to present them to someone else for final approvals or something. She only wanted minor changes and commended me for sticking close to her vision from the guidelines she created. Then she got sick and the project's director told me Yen was going to be approving the designs from here on out. Yen did not like anything and wanted me to change everything. This character is African American, why does she have that hair? Why don't you give her an afro or cornrows? Not only a bad idea, but also kind of offensive. Don't we already have a blonde? Why can't this one have purple hair and a thicker body? Why is this one fat? She was not fat, she was like Mei from Overwatch and personally the scenario writer's favorite design. There were notes about every little aspect of that character and I knew I got it right. In the end, all of the changes he asked for would make the girls look kind of the same, just palette swaps with very little difference, like they were all to his own personal aesthetic, not like a balanced roster like Jessica wanted. I tried to explain to him about the changes, the contracts and all of that, but he was rude, condescending, and disrespectful. He even said they didn't know why they were paying me so much, there were better artists on DeviantArt, which I'll say yes there are, but they wouldn't work with you, jackoff. He demanded more changes and more fixes and a lot of stuff outside of the scope of the project, and threatened to terminate my contract using one of the clauses, which would say that I was not working up to the ability and aesthetic displayed when I was hired. Basically, my art wasn't at the same level as my portfolio and gallery. They'd only pay for half of the total work no matter what was done, and everyone would cut their losses. He brought this up almost every time I brought up how his changes were against the contract. He'd say he read the contract, but I didn't think he had, cause he was also disapproving designs that Jessica had already approved, and told me to just do what I was told, or he would find someone better. When I complained to the project manager, they deferred to the writer and didn't really want to listen to me about the contract, so if they didn't care, I didn't care. I did all of his stupid designs, all of his accessories and changes, everything that he wanted. I was happy, enthusiastic. All of those great designs I did for Jessica were replaced, and I got written confirmation that he was rejecting the designs and that he wanted the new ones. I did everything I was asked because I knew how this was going to go down. Eventually, Jessica returned and was livid about the new designs. The other person above her and the writer was also upset, as they had liked all the original designs and, according to the contract, I was to be paid a crap ton more for all the changes and edits. But here is where my compliance became malicious. In the contract, I specifically write that I can keep any rejected designs. This is a hard point that I write in all my freelance contracts. I do not want you keeping good designs you didn't pay for, or hitting me with a "you made it while working for us" type of deal. I keep and own any rejected design, so all of those ultra-specific great designs Jessica wanted were legally mine. Apparently, not only did the rest of the folks working on their team not like the samey and frankly pedestrian look to all the girls I designed, he didn't care at all about the beast, monsters, and men, but they'd seen most of the ones I sent to Jessica. But I had in writing the rejections for those designs and the acceptance for others. When they wanted them back, I charged them full price for those designs, except the one with the curvy May girl. I gave that to Jessica. They ended up having to hire me to redesign the girls according to the guideline, as my art would be used in areas of the game, promotion, and apparently the companion book, and they didn't want to use the lame designs or switch out to another artist who could recreate my style. The fallout. They ended up paying me almost double what I was to be paid for the entire project, and despite hating to fork over the cash, ended up paying me as a retainer for some more work down the line. Yen was demoted to being a scenario writer for this project and no longer allowed to talk to the artist. I know this because the new lead writer Jessica told me, also apologized for Yen's behavior and stuff. Yen spent the entire time doing all this blaming me and sending me passive-aggressive texts. But I told him if he didn't like it, he could always go hire an artist from DeviantArt. Moral of the story is, if you want to tout following the contract or threaten me with our contract, you best have read that contract more carefully. You might not like my compliance. Okay, if you're gonna create a game that's based around then maybe you should read a contract and learn not to yourself. Unless that's what you're into, then that's on you, I guess. By the way, having the line in the contract where you get to keep all of the rejected designs is absolutely brilliant. Good work, OP. Our next story today comes to us from Rum Bun Bun. Can't even drive the company truck 12 feet on the weekend? Okay, let's jump right in. This is my husband's story from a few years ago. He was an equipment salesman and had a company pickup that he brought home at night and on weekends. His company did not allow personal use aside from driving it to and from work. Some salesmen took advantage of having a pickup and did use it for personal use, and the company installed GPS systems on all company vehicles at the first of the year. My husband was pretty miffed, as he really hadn't misused his truck, but he figured he had nothing to hide, so he shrugged it off. In February, he had to attend a trade show on a Saturday. This triggered the GPS, and he would have gotten a nasty call from his boss, who was located in another state. My husband had to provide documentation that he was attending a company-sanctioned event. He felt like he was being babysat. This happened a couple other times as well. One Saturday that spring, he backed the truck out of the garage and onto the driveway to get the lawnmower out. After he finished mowing, he pulled it back into the garage. Yep, you guessed it, this triggered the GPS twice, and on Monday, his boss called him and chewed him out. My husband tried to explain, but Lou was mad. "You know you are not to drive the company truck on the weekend. I was moving it out of the garage so I could get my mower out. Does your report show how far each trip was? They were 0.0025 miles each." He paused as he seemed to realize how short of a distance these trips were. "But well, that doesn't matter. No driving after hours or on the weekends. This is being noted in your file." So on the weekends, he either parked on the street or in the driveway. A few weeks later, his compliance became malicious. We lived in the Midwest where thunderstorms, tornadoes, and hailstorms are not uncommon. We were under a storm advisory with a strong probability of hail. "Should I move your truck into the garage?" I asked my husband. "You'd think so, but today is a Sunday, and I am forbidden from driving my truck even a few feet. So it's going to stay where it is," he said. As the hail came down about the size of a quarter, he stood looking out the window at the truck grinning. He loved explaining the damage to his boss and reminding him why the truck was no longer parked in a nice, safe garage. edited to add, when he reported the damage, he reminded his boss that it was a shame he wasn't allowed to move the truck into his garage when he came aware that a storm was coming. The boss knew darn well he had maliciously followed the policy. The policy was relaxed and reworded a few weeks later, not sure if it was a direct result of this. If the boss complained, you could just tell them, well, now the truck's covered in dimples. You know, speed dimples. They go faster, like on a golf ball. Our next story today comes to us from Joy Reader Zero, page 34 in your own manual, sir. Let's jump right in. Here is something I hope that others can turn to their own advantage. Small, but does the job. I took a few years off to have kids. Ladies, you know the drill. Then back to retail to gain a reference for a part-time office job in a company I shall call DaBiz. Once hired at DaBiz, I improved and expanded that second job by reading the manuals and taking on responsibilities for technical tasks that nobody else wanted to learn how to do. Spreadsheets, backups, documentation, inventory. All my life, I have avoided being manipulated by experts, my parents, my teachers, my church, my classmates. Nobody at DaBiz was a patch on the butt of my sweet, conniving little old grandma. So when the first thing HR said upon hiring me was, "Last hired, first fired, we can lay you off at any time without reason," I knew it was time to study the employee manual. Part-time work had definite advantages. For instance, when the kids did the chicken pox at the classic 2-week intervals, if I'd been full-time, they would have fired me. Said so right there in that employee manual. Such sweethearts. I worked very hard and was amused at the contortions my employers went through to keep me legal. There's a limit to the number of hours one can work in a calendar year and still be considered part-time. I invariably ran out of hours in early October. Somehow, they would contrive to keep me working without bennies for the rest of the year. Suddenly, at 4 years and 8 months, they offered to let me go full-time. This was entirely unexpected. The kids were old enough, I was already considering it, but for them to offer without being asked? No applications, interviews, and ceremonial groveling? Garbage alarm goes double whoopee ding ding. Back to the manual. Oh, well, that's entirely characteristic of DaBiz. That's very kind of you, sir. I shall be happy to go full-time in 4 months, as soon as I have celebrated my 5th anniversary with DaBiz. 4 months? We want you to start right away. But you see, sir, if I go full-time before working a full 5 years, I lose all seniority and the extra week of vacation I've worked so hard for. It's right here in your employee manual. If I wait 4 months, I keep my seniority and vacation. If I stay part-time forever, I still keep my seniority and vacation. And of course, my flexibility if there is a family crisis. It makes no difference to my paycheck, as you are not offering a raise. Indeed, without a raise to support the cost of your benefits, take-home pay will be less. He looked at me, I looked at him, and we understood each other perfectly. Nice try. Go tell your boss it didn't work. You know, the jerk who made the secretaries type up his thesis and made me tweak all the graphs to make his data support his conclusions. I went full-time shortly after my 5th anniversary and worked there for another 15 years. Quite literally everything is spelled out in an employee handbook and also in an employment contract. So both of those, if you have them, make sure you know them front to back. In all honesty, if you spend a little bit of time to read those documents, you'll probably know more about them than the management does anyway, because I can pretty much guarantee you that none of them have read it all the way through. Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.